Recently, I've really started to like lease options because they're great for the right tenants, they're great for you as a landlord, and they're great for you as a real estate investor who's going to sell the property in the future.
This board right here represents our entire existence in this world, and we're not moving shit.
So if you're getting burnt out on renting out your properties, fixing toilets, responding to maintenance calls, you don't really know what your end game is going to be with your properties, lease options may be a great solution for you. In this video, let's go ahead and break down why lease options are great for certain tenants, why lease options take a lot of burdens off you as a landlord and property manager, and why lease options can help you get great returns in the future when you go to sell the property.
We got time frames here. You know, you want the IRS to come in and take half of what we got? That's what's gonna happen if we don't get on top of this shit.
We all know how difficult it is to make those onerous deadlines for the 1031 exchanges. So I'm going to give you one of my favorite solutions, which is rent to owns through leases with option to purchase. With a lease option to purchase, also, you have defined timelines in place. Whereas with your traditional rentals, when you go to sell them, it may be kind of haphazard. Oh, a lease just expired, I'm gonna put this house on the market. Or I have a lease coming up, and put this house on the market. And then you have difficulty capturing those 1031 gains. But with a lease option, especially if you can stack your option to purchases, now you may have a point in the future where you're able to convert multiple properties in one.
Problem is that, you know, once you buy something and sell it, you have to go out and buy something else. Otherwise, you know, you have to pay tax. My clock is always ticking. I'm always out there buying stuff, selling it, and trying to fight that 6-month window of replacing what I sold, because if I had to pay tax, they'd go back all the years from back when I started, and it would be a very high tax bill.
So with lease options, it gives you an opportunity as you start accumulating assets and you start running into those timelines that handicap a lot of people with 1031 exchanges. Now you can negotiate with those tenants that have lease options coming up so you can stack those closings at similar times. If you're able to stack all your closings for your lease options at similar times, it's going to help you make those very restrictive IRS imposed deadlines for your 1031 exchanges. One thing that I think is very important with anything that you get into is creating win-win situations. I really like how the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about this, specifically with real estate, and one of the examples that he gives. I'll put a link to the book down below. But when we're trying to set the people we work with up for success, namely the tenants, a lot of people want a pathway to home ownership even if they don't have the best credit or they don't have, the greatest job history. Lease options are a way to provide them with a path to home ownership. So the lease option, a lease option is a form of rent to own, but it's a lease and an option to purchase. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax professional, so please consult one of those before you make your own decisions. I'm just going to speak from my experience and what's worked well in the past for me. Anecdotally, one of the things I like to explain from the way I understand it, now you have a lease which will look very similar to the lease that you use for your traditional rentals. And then you'll have the option to purchase, which provides the tenant some period of time and a defined price at which they can purchase the home. And both of these are going to play out into creating a win-win situation for both the tenant and the landlord if structured appropriately. For the tenants, they're able to get into a home with a defined lease payment. Usually I have some kind of concessions in there if their credit isn't up to standard, so you can have increased down payments. There's a number of ways that you can work with tenants who may not otherwise qualify to be able to get them into that home. Also, the tenant, since they do have that option to purchase, is now more incentivized to treat that home as their own because they do plan on buying it in the future, and you've created a path for them to be able to do that. So one of the things I find with lease options is that you have tenants that are much more invested in the home that they're living in because they're legitimately creating their home. So this is a huge win for tenants. that may not have been able to go out and get a home loan right off the bat, or may not be able to finance a property, or maybe there's some kind of uncertainty in their life coming up and they're not really ready to commit to a home just yet. So having a lease with an option to purchase gives them a little bit more flexibility. So you have a couple key tenants where these could be good for. One's the tenant who needs flexibility. They don't want to commit to a home yet. And so by having a lease with an option to purchase, they can kind of, if they're new to a town, they can try out the town, see if it's where they want to live before committing to purchase. And then you also have tenants who maybe don't have the credit to get a home loan right now, but by having some period where they're able to lease the home, they can then work on their credit, get it up so they can exercise their option to purchase, prior to that option expiring. So you have a couple different groups of tenants where a lease option to purchase can be a great win for them. Now for you as a landlord, why would I want to create a lease option structure where I'll be selling the home in the future? And two reasons. So let's approach it first from the leasing side. So some of the places where I have lease options, I have them in two different towns right now, and in one town a very, very nice rental is never going to command more than $800 to $900 a month rent. In another town where I have lease options, even a nice rental isn't going to command more than $550 to $600 a month rent. So when you're talking about a nice home only being able to command $550 a month rent, you can quickly see that it's not going to be economically sustainable to purchase homes, fix them up, and put them up on traditional rentals where you're still responsible for maintenance and everything else that goes along with that. So how do people get rental housing? That's the problem. In places like this, it's very difficult for there to even be affordable housing because landlords can't afford to buy dilapidated homes, fix them up, rent them out, continue to be responsible for maintenance, and only get $550 a month. I mean, if you've ever done a remodel, you know that that's just not going to pay off, especially if you're trying to contract out all the work. It won't pay off. But with lease options to purchase, where the tenant's going to be responsible for maintenance, you can get into the home, get it up to a livable standard, maybe not do all the finish work, and then put it up on a lease option to purchase where all the major systems are working well, the home is now safe to live in, everything is sound, you have nice solid fundamentals in the home, and somebody who wants to go ahead and continue doing work on their own in exchange for discounted rent can now rent this home at a substantial discount and do the work themselves to get it to where they want it to be. So that's one incentive as a landlord. Even though you're now getting a reduced rent on the property, you can still get a home out, provide affordable housing in a community where there otherwise would be a huge shortage of rental properties available just due to the prices. As an investor, lease options can also be advantageous in the fact that you're offering an option to purchase. Now you may say, wait, I bought this house as a rental, I'm not wanting to sell it already, and that's true, but with the option to purchase, you can go ahead and factor in anticipated inflation into that option to purchase. Obviously, if someone has a 60-month option to purchase that they can exercise 5 years from now, you're not going to put the sale price in today's dollars, right? You're going to put the sale price with anticipated inflation and market growth 5 years from now. So similarly, if you have a 36-month option to purchase, then maybe you wouldn't have quite as much inflation in that option to purchase. But as someone who's buying a home, monetizing it with the hopes that it's going to appreciate in the future, if you could capture that future appreciation earlier, wouldn't you want to do that? So that's something that I initially struggled with because I thought, well, I'm building this rental portfolio. I don't want to handicap myself by selling houses that I anticipated renting for a long time. But then I thought about it, and if ultimately you are going to sell these homes in the future, if you could capture those gains earlier, wouldn't you? So that was another thing that I've thought about with a rent, with the rent to owns that I have.